Welcome to episode 36 of Why Not Read Alpha Flight with Chris Baker
and Tom Flynn, a podcast where we take your favorite series seriously.
We've got a milestone issue today, number 50. It is a 40-page double-sized issue, and boy howdy does Bill Mantlo use it and fill them with more words than a Hemingway novel. The last several issues have seen the departure,
death,
of several Alphans and supporting characters, and this issue maintains that trend as we wrap up the story for Northstar, Aurora, and Puck, as all three leave by the end of this issue.
There is a whole lot to chew on in this. We hope you enjoy it as you're preparing your Thanksgiving dinner today, as this goes up on October 13th, 2025, the day of Canadian Thanksgiving for all those uncultured out there.
I wanted to do this episode like NPR on American Thanksgiving, where we just talk about making food and silly light things as people are cooking with family. Tom pointed out that this is an Alpha Flight podcast, not a whatever the hell I'm talking about podcast.
Maybe that's how we get more Patreon subscribers, like let Chris do his goofy themed episodes over there. You know what? Let us know. I take that back. I don't want to know. If you want it, tough. We're not doing that.
I still want to produce a terrible radio play of an issue with terrible Foley work and narrator voice. Oh. Whenever I find the right one, Tom, we're doing it.
Let's refresh ourselves on the story so far.
The team currently consists of Heather Hudson, a.k.a. Vindicator, when she wears her powered super suit, who is developing romantic feelings for Mr. Madison Jeffries, mutant transmutator of technology, who recently claimed the box armor in combat and has made it his own. So Mr. Jeffries now has the a.k.a. of Box.
Like we always say, Chris, you keep what you kill. Jean-Paul Beaubier, a.k.a. Northstar, has a cough that has been getting progressively worse, and the team is seeking treatment for him as he appears to be near death. Jean-Marie Beaubier, a.k.a. Aurora, well, the less said about her recent treatment, probably the better. Both twins can fly at super speed and have pointy ears and elven features, and no one has ever asked why. There was definitely a point where Walt called Northstar a pointy-eared bastard or something or other. I mean, probably couldn't have said bastard, but basically that's what Walt got across.
Speaking of Walt, our friend, secret agent linebacker superhero Dr. Walter Lankowski, a.k.a. Sasquatch, is back, baby, in the white Sasquatch form and with the human alter ego of Wanda Lankowski, a very tall, very attractive, white-haired woman. Her suit acrobatic dwarf in a unitard, Eugene Judd, a.k.a. Puck, has been emotionally checked out of this team for at least 6 issues. He gets hurt in every battle and constantly wonders if he belongs here or what he brings to the team. He loves Heather Hudson but hates his dwarf status and is constantly bringing himself down.
You know what? The less said about Puck's recent treatment, the better too.
Hear, hear.
Beta Flight has expanded beyond little Kara Killgrave, 13 years old, aka the Purple Girl, to include Dr. Whitman Knapp, aka Mannequin, who is definitely more than 10 years older than Kara.
What else do you need to know? All right, see, this issue features Loki and is a follow-up to the X-Men Alpha Flight miniseries, so there's a lot. So on top of our normal story so far, there's all of that to remind you of. If you're rusty on the fire fountain and anodyne and the threesome couch and all that, I recommend you go revisit episode 19 of this podcast titled The Gift, just to have that all fresh in your mind.
I can't believe we've done this long enough to refer back to our own episode as the place to get caught up on something.
Well, if you want a different take on the subject matter, you can check out Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men episode number 49, titled Guitar Solo of the Gods, but they focus on Alpha Flight a lot less than us. To be fair, we focus on the X-Men less than them.
I hope Nightcrawler comes back again. Werner Herzog Nightcrawler is a lot of fun. So, fair warning, we're going to refer to the events of the miniseries, as we'll call it from here on out, as if you have listened to our recap of it. Otherwise, it's really just too much to explain.
Okay, but I do want to take one stab at it. Loki tried to give a gift to humanity by elevating them to gods with a fire fountain, but the process would have killed all magic and magic users on Earth, like Shaman and Snowbird. Alpha Flight and the X-Men rejected the gift, and Loki got in trouble with They Who Sit Above in Shadow.
That is 100% accurate, and yet somehow not helpful at all.
Nailed it! In some ways, this looks like a way to shoehorn the miniseries into current readers' consciousness. It came out during, if you recall, that tumultuous transition from Byrne to Mantlo, and was very expensive, so a lot of readers probably hadn't had the pleasure. It's a way of acknowledging the history and also tying it up neatly, which really feels like the theme of this part of Alpha Flight here, of Bill Mantlo looking at the past, tying it up, and getting everything put away so that when he starts on issue number 51 with the team he wants. We don't have any of this baggage floating around.
With all that said, and without any further ado, Alpha Flight number 50, titled This Mortal Coil, cover date September 1987. The writer is Bill Mantlo, artists are June Brigman and Whilce Portacio, letter is Janice Chung, colorer is Bob Sharon, editor is Carl Potts, and the editor-in-chief is Jim Shooter.
On the cover, Loki is giving the reader a smoldering look over his shoulder as he peers away from his scrying bowl, where he is observing an army of demon imp things overtaking Vindicator, Northstar, and Aurora. He calls it the Well of the Weird, with a Y, later on in the issue, so I guess because Shakespeare or something?
Not exactly. It's actually the name of the spring that feeds Yggdrasil in Norse mythology and is also connected to the Norns. So it's not a huge stretch to turn it into a scrying pool for Loki. And there's a lot of Loki in this issue, which is a choice. I will say, though, this Mortal Coil is probably a Hamlet reference from the to be or not to be speech.
There's also a box declaring 1987 the year of the reader with the familiar library icon of a stick figure reading a book. I always found it sweet that libraries have their own icon that doesn't require reading to understand. That is beautiful to me. Splash page open with Alpha Flight standing in the wasteland that is Ugava Bay, looking at a single red flower magically growing out of the snow, which is the shot the miniseries ended with, alongside some great Claremont writing, if I remember correctly.
They have come here seeking the magic that prompted, well, all of the X-Men Alpha Flight miniseries, hoping it might cure both Northstar and Aurora, who are sick in body and mind, respectively. What appeared to be a standard Aurora in the Dark freakout last issue is treated much more seriously here, and Northstar, yeah, he's looking rough.
Box says, "Scramble, my brother Lionel might have cured both kids if I hadn't destroyed him." Okay, 1, Madison is very loyal and blind to the faults of his friends and family. 2, how old is Madison if he's calling Aurora and Northstar kids? I had been thinking of them as about 25, old enough to have been adults for a little bit, but young enough to still not know shit about shit. I don't think I called 25-year-olds kids till I was at least 40.
Jeffries has been drawn as more, shall we say, weathered than the other members of Alpha Flight. I mean, I'd be willing to guess he's in his late 30s or more at this point. Plus, let's not forget to use our proper barometer here. Heather really is attracted to older men.
All right, buckle up, listeners. Madison volunteered for the Vietnam War. Canada sent a peacekeeping force in 1973, but we're told Madison and Lionel both volunteered for the American military, which means they were there sometime between 1955 and 1975, which doesn't really narrow it down. So, let's assume they were there at the peak of the American troop presence in 1969, and that Madison was 19 when they volunteered. That means he was born in 1950 and would be 37 at the time this is published. I think that counts, especially considering you've been to war, as old enough to call them kids.
Well, without doing any research to verify all this, I think Heather is about 28 years old at this point in time, thereabouts. And given the age gap between her and JMH, Madison is right in her wheelhouse.
Or, you know, a touch younger. As Shoresy would say, a bit young, don't you think?
And this whole conversation is making me very uncomfortable.
As uncomfortable as Heather is with men her own age?
Yes, because I'm very uncomfortable and want you to stop talking.
Moving on to the second page of this issue, listeners.
There's a bit of exposition about the miniseries for the benefit of Sasquatch, who was dead at the time. Happier days, am I right?
Box says, "If we can't detect the source of the magic here on the surface, then dig we must." And he transformers himself into a rocket-propelled drill bit.
There's a panel of Puck and Sasquatch, both commenting that Mr. Jeffries is really coming into his own as a transformer. As Box finds the buried Viking village, Loki sees this through his Well of the Weird with the Y, and does a whole page of narration about the miniseries.
Mantlo does not do Asgardian dialogue with nearly as much flair as Walt Simonson. It just doesn't flow as smoothly. Or maybe I just don't extend his version the same goodwill I do to Walt. There's some magic lacking here when Bill writes the these and thous.
Alpha Flight descends down the deep, dark hole to help their elven-looking twins. Worth noting, Aurora is wearing a new winterized outfit that's green and black with a bit of a star motif and kind of a head sock thing that evokes the look of a nun. Weird time to bust out a new look, I think. Northstar is in a coat and puffy go-go boots over his uniform.
And Puck looks like Ralphie's little brother in a big coat and what appear to be mittens.
I'm going to hate this part. Meanwhile, back at Mansion Alpha on Tamarin Island, the two members of Beta Flight, surgical intern Dr. Whitman Knapp and little Kara Killgrave, 13 years old, have been left alone to do whatever they want.
I believe when I texted you about this, Tom, what I texted you was, she's going to have to open up a bakery to get rid of all the baby batter he's going to give her.
Yeah, and I promptly snapped my phone in half, set it on fire, and forced myself to forget you ever said it. But here it is on a recording. That's great. I mean,
Knapp should know how to keep that from happening.
Okay.
But the way you keep that from happening is to not bang the 13-year-old girl, Dr. Whitman Knapp.
It's guys. It's we're definitely not reproducing this dialogue.
The script just says parenting rant here about babies making babies. That's all that we're directed to do.
The dialogue is quite literally like him making sort of a clumsy like pass at her and her implying that they should do more than just like cuddle. And like literally that's what's said there. There's no reason to do this other than to say, oh, they're here. You could have done like a establishing shot of that. It's really messed up, y'all. And I'm very unhappy with this component of all of this.
I'm going to make this even worse, Tom.
Oh,
remember,
great.
Everything they say and do is also recorded for Heather to watch later.
Great. So,
I hate everything about this. I hate the new Beta Flight, Tom. I am much more comfortable with New Mutants style, even Kitty Pryde style, where she just hangs out with the adults and they don't take her to school and she just kind of learns how to be a superhero and that's all. You know what? I will take that over Dr. Whitman fucking Knapp. I don't know how we pull out of this. This is one page of the book and we are just stuck here like quicksand.
Alpha Flight finds their way from the Viking village over to the fire fountain, which feels like it should always have an exclamation point after it. I mean, okay, I just read that. Chris, you spend a lot of time complaining about all the exclamation points and you want more?
Yeah.
You want more?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I just want them used right.
Or at least the shaft.
You're damn right.
In which the fire fountain used to be. Now it's just an empty, open air hole in the bare rock, extending down deep into the earth.
Aurora flies at speed to the bottom of the well and finds an enormous golden gate with ornate naked elves engraved on it and surmises the source of the fire fountain's power must be on the other side. Now, I thought we were trying to find a doctor. How is the first move? Let's go try to use some of that magic that requires killing our friends.
To be fair, Snowbird is already dead and Shaman has left this realm, so, you know.
No, like, I just don't understand why this is the solution here. There's nothing to be found here except ruination and more involvement from Loki, and it's a failure of leadership, Tom. That's what I think it is. The team quickly descends on a completely incomprehensible configuration of Box, and upon landing, Box transforms again into a giant winch to lever the handle of the gate up until Sasquatch can properly lift it. I posit that we would not have gotten this Box had Mantlo not written some Transformers comics. How does Box power the lights and his jets? Like, what is the power of the mechanic? I like this Box so long as I don't think about it too much, Tom.
How Box works is a great Mantlo thread. On the other side of the gate, they find a gray, lifeless, foul-smelling place instead of a source of light and healing and, just dive on in. This is a bad decision.
It's a failure of leadership, Tom. Like I said.
They have no magical guidance, and it isn't working out the way they planned. They are in way over their heads and carrying the idiot ball right now.
The team decides to search for some magic or something, and Aurora stays to tend to Northstar despite having touched him and losing her power to create light, having already tricked the team by altering the signs on the outside of the gate to something more, shall we say, friendly-looking than the horned demon look the gate should have. Loki ups the stakes by magically afflicting Northstar with a desperate thirst, which Aurora alleviates by giving him water from the magic fairy cave they are in.
Look, I'm not a druid or some other form of old magic type person, but even I know if you're in the realm of the Fae, you don't eat or drink anything. Dr. Michael fucking Two Youngmen would have told them that. He would have learned them that. God, I miss Michael. I miss
Michael, not Talisman. I miss Michael.
Ugh.
Yeah, I agree. I also teach my daughter that if you're in a weird magical place, don't eat anything, don't drink anything. Just remember this, okay? Just in case. The rest of the team stumbles across a shaft.
You're damn right.
Identical to the one they just left, but this one is filled with black fire fountain. Is it black fire? looks more viscous than that. They keep calling it a fire fountain.
At which point, Loki appears to gloat and explain that the original fire fountain opened into Alfheim, home of the Light Elves, while he tricked them into coming to Svartalheim, home of the evil Dark Elves.
Big fight with faceless enemies. Puck acquits himself well before an enemy punches him with a swak sound effect off the platform and into the dark fire fountain. Like its light counterpart, it heals Puck of his enforced dwarfism, but it also releases the evil spirit of reimagined from his prison inside Puck.
Loki then pops over to Aurora and Northstar and has a bunch of imps force Aurora to drink the weird water and share in a dream with Northstar to learn the truth about their parents?
Yeah. All right, we got a lot of ground to cover. So, all right, remember Aquaman's origin in the movie? It's that, but instead of a lighthouse keeper, the dad is a Celtic mythology nut, and instead of a mermaid, the mom is a light elf. And instead of surviving when her people come back for her, the mom dies for real.
Was that really easier than telling the story straight?
The light elves totally ignore the dying male human and the half-elf babies lying alongside the wrecked car. Apparently, in elf society, half-elves are nothing. They have a one-drop rule for humanity, I guess. So, that's why they have pointy ears, folks, because they're actually half-elves. This is a real thing that was written by Bill Mantlo and published in Alpha Flight issue number 50. Loki tells them their elf half cannot tolerate life on Midgard, Earth, and expressed itself as physical ailments in Northstar and psychological ailments in Aurora. Then he leaves them in the dark with the imps to do terrible things to them.
Aurora fights them off with her conveniently returned light powers. Literally, she blasts them like a D&D cleric with light blasts.
I don't think we've seen her power used that way before.
She kind of did it to Razor.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be that he was really susceptible to that. You know, it wasn't the same as like, Dazzler makes light
constructs, right?
Yeah, that hurt people. So this is a weird, new costume, new power uses. Goodbye, Aurora. She then channels all her light into Northstar and heals him of his ailment, and also somehow stripping him of his winter gear.
I'm not convinced that Northstar's uniform isn't just a full body tattoo at this point.
Oh God. Oh God, you added that after I wrote this part, and I did not see that coming. You're right. Jesus.
The imps take Aurora off into the dark, and there will be no I've seen that movie joke here because, well, that right there is a really unfortunate trope, leaving a glowing Northstar to fly off to find the rest of the team.
The rest of the team is fighting reimagined, which I think we should have pronounced it the whole time, but there's two A's, reimagined, and losing both the fight and inches every time reimagined's magical sword connects with them. Faced with both reimagined and the ill-defined bad guy horde, the team chooses to run the fuck away. Now we're getting some positive leadership here, Tom. All the way away, through the gate, slamming it shut, and melting the metal to fully seal it.
With two Alphans inside.
As the team ponders the magically growing flower, Northstar gives a weird speech, starts glowing, and ascends to a doorway in the clouds where some elf ladies welcome him. This issue is a lot.
But wait, there's more. Loki gets his ass hauled in front of those who sit above in shadow, who had told him at the end of the miniseries that he couldn't exact revenge on the mortals who refused his gift. Loki does his song and dance for them to show how he left all the mortals better off when they started. How, you ask? Well, it seems that Aurora transferring her light to Northstar gave him all the elf stuff between them, and she got all the mortal stuff. Bonus, her mind is whole, but her memory is completely wiped. He delivered her to a convent where she would be taken care of, and goddamn those who sit above in shadow must not know anything about Aurora to think that's a good thing for her.
And Northstar is now fully an elf and reunited with his true people. That's right, folks. We can officially say without any subtext or slurring that Northstar is a fairy.
And Puck? Well, old Puck is back to being capital O, old Puck. Loki transports Giant Judge to the place he loved most in the world, Tibet, where he started his career as a soldier of fortune and where he always wanted to stay.
It's the last time I'll get to do the Puck voice for a while, so I'm gonna quote him. Things weren't working out with Valfa. My talents weren't up to the power of the new team, and Heather clearly loved another. I was on the verge of leaving. Now it looks like someone's given me a chance to start over. A second shot at happiness. Whoever's responsible, thanks. Which, I mean, I guess that's actually a good thing that Loki did in a horrible way. Puck does seem kind of happy, but I'll have more about that later.
Those who sit above in shadow smile and nod at Loki and show him the door, which drops him back in Svartalheim with no way out.
Seeing how easily I mean, you mentioned, having Loki do all of his Loki stuff here is a choice. But seeing how easily he can slip into something like Alpha Flight, it makes me realize how central he is to what makes the foundation of Marvel work. There's a reason that not only was he the first villain of the first, Avengers movie, but he has kept coming back through the Thor movies, through the other Avengers and everything. And he's part of one of the main threads that a lot of comic book fans can overlook if you don't know your Silver Age. But stories like this, when you're reading Alpha Flight as a kid, you're like, who the fuck is Loki? What's this going on? Why is he saying thee and thou? But in the context of the greater, if you're a Marvel zombie, not even a Marvel zombie, but a Marvel fan who's doing other things, Loki is one of those through lines. I think Stiltman is one of those through lines. So
it adds some additional weight to the choices made in the Loki series and how it wraps up, like how critical he is. And, frankly, that's one of the characters and one of the thematics that they pulled off quite well throughout the MCU in those early phases and up until they turned Loki into the god of stories. So yeah, that's a good point. As the now have team flies away in what must feel like a very empty Alpha jet, Heather has a closing tearful monologue in thought bubbles. The Alpha Flight that my late husband forged is gone now. Not a single original member remains. I'm left leader of a trio comprising 3 of the most powerful Alphans ever. To get here, we've had to suffer the deaths of some members and the loss of others. I've presided over all that misery. Can I go on? Dare I? I feel like each loss carves another notch in my heart, making me even more cold, callous, cruel. Will I, in time, sacrifice these Alphans? Worse, would I even offer up the fledgling Beta Flight, or some elusive notion of the greater good? Maybe I'm being too hard on myself. Other leaders of other super teams have had to grapple with the same tough choices. I never asked for this responsibility, but like them, I've inherited it. Maybe someone else would come forth to carry the torch if I let it fall, but they'd have to start from scratch. Whereas I've already run the gauntlet and survived. So I guess I've answered my own question. For better or worse, Alpha Flight's mine. May heaven help me.
And Feeney.
At some point, you might hear my head hit the desk. Yeah,
there's a lot that happened here, and things are different, and that's okay, because this book is built upon flux. It's built upon changing the status quo constantly. We're going to have a 3-issue arc after this, and then we go to space for a while.
That makes a ton of sense. Okay.
Well, you remember when we first met Bill Mantlo on this podcast, back in those Hulk issues that we were trying to figure out where Hulk had been before he showed up, and we had to deal with him. And it was all Hulk flying around in space in absolutely incomprehensible stuff that I defy anyone to tell me in a way that makes sense. Yeah, that's where we're going, buddy. We're going right back where we started. We're going back to the future. Yeah, we do have some more structured final thoughts. Those were our fun ones. When I said about Puck, where he ended up kind of better off, that made me think of the Siege Perilous, which is a apparently old Celtic story, but turned up in Uncanny X-Men number 247 and 251 for sure, and it was around a little bit more. It was a magical portal that would grow, and you could walk through it, and you would be judged based on, who and what you were in life, and then that magical authority would put you somewhere new and give you a fresh start. So the X-Men got away from, it was the beginning of Bastion when Nimrod and Master Mold had come together and they were too powerful. They sent that through the Siege Perilous, and that's how you end up with Bastion. And then they got through the Siege Perilous to get away from the Reavers because Psylocke tricked them all. 251 is the one where Wolverine's up on the X-Cross that was in Deadpool and Wolverine. The Outback era is kind of my sweet spot for the X-Men. So anyway, that idea of having a new life, the old one was not working. You were already emotionally checked out of it. You wanted something new, and then suddenly you've got not just a new life, a new place, a new body for Puck. There's a lot of that going on.
Another topic we kind of want to touch on was the power of Alpha Flight is mentioned twice in the final pages by Puck and by Vindicator. I gotta say, I kind of disagree here. I don't think this current team of Alpha Flight is more powerful necessarily than the original team, or even some of the versions that occurred along the way. Madison Jeffries as Box is a game changer.
He's 60% of the power of the team.
But
he's a lot.
But when you have Shaman, Snowbird, and Talisman on the team at the same time. I mean, that's bringing a lot to the table as well. Plus, you have Box with Roger Box working with them. It's kind of like what flavor do you like? But I guess I would suggest that the team getting progressively smaller is actually what's working against Puck and his skill set more than the increase in the power. There are fewer bodies to go around to assist with things, especially as North Star has been getting weaker and weaker, that he and Aurora barely team up anymore. In those early days, they were working in tandem to take down threats.
Not just touching each other, but like and activating special powers, but actively working together to use their powers to create things that happen. But that generally happened under the leadership of JMH.
And that allowed Puck to pick his spots a bit better. And when he picks his spot and when he's actually able to affect things, it's substantial. Now, it is fair to point out that in Alpha Flight's very first adventure, Puck doesn't even make it there. And had he made it there, God knows what he would have done. So from the beginning, there has been a bit of an issue of power scaling when it comes to what Puck brings to the table. I think, though, that it's really much more a question of bodies at this point than it is the team is so much more powerful than it was at the outset.
I think that Mantlo was really discounting the power of Shaman and Snowbird and even Talisman, and the stuff that we've done up until now was him trying to grapple with that and make it work, and it never worked for him. He doesn't know how to tell a magic story. So yes, this alpha team, Sasquatch and Box, can kick ass. Box can be anything they need for any tool. He's the sonic screwdriver. I guess he's Heather's sonic hibachi.
Nope.
You knew where I was going before I even got there. And Heather can fly and can project energy and apparently melt metal. I didn't know she could do that. But anyway, yeah, those three are powerful things. But when they're up against something magical, they can't do shit.
Yeah, Loki was able to do whatever he wanted, right?
And there was nobody to say, hey, these are things, like we said, Michael would have told them that. And when we get on the other side of the Mantlo era, he's going to drop the magic stuff. But I believe it's Hudnall that brings in a lot more magic stuff that I believe even Heather and the rest of the characters are like, damn, we are not well equipped for magic right now. This is the worst possible villain for us to be up against right now because we got nothing. We can't punch magic.
And to the point of punching, even some of the power that these characters possess works against them. I mean, when they all squared off against Deadly Ernest, there's a reason that Puck was the one that had to finish the job. Everyone else charged in, got their asses handed to them, got basically killed, and then Puck was the one that had to go. You need a rogue, all right? It's helpful to have. It's helpful to have a rogue, and they very much do not have that at this point in time.
Yeah, actually, if you think about the breakdown of this, there's no rogue, there's no cleric, there's no not even a warlock.
There's really not a wizard. Maybe you could say Heather's functioning as a sorcerer.
That's kind of where I was putting her, was at the sorcerer more than wizard. I feel like we've lost the thread here. So we're down to our three people. It's going to be Heather's kooky trio or whatever we called it. It's going to be Heather and Wanda and Jeffries for a while. That's it. That's what we got. And then we've got Beta Flight, and we're about to get a new Beta Flight. Yay. Guess what, Tom? It keeps getting worse.
Nope. I don't want to know. On that front.
All right, but okay, so we've kind of complained about how long it's taken for all these characters to leave, that normally when you have an all new, all different Alpha Flight, you just do it. You wrap it up in 3 issues and then you just hit it with the new team. But imagine if in like one issue, Bill got rid of Snowbird, Shaman, Puck, Northstar, and Aurora. It would have been like the Transformers cartoon movie, which came out in 1986, and I'm certain Bill saw because he wrote the first couple Marvel Transformers comics in 1985. Actually, now that I think about it, I could totally see Bill pitching, all right, in this issue, I'm going to get rid of 5 of our core team members, plus kill off her husband and baby. It's going to be great. Check this out, Jim. And he gets done, and Jim is like, you know what? Maybe just slow it down a bit. Just a bit.
Slow it down a bit, I get. It took a year and a half. Of publishing time. Mantlo, as the writer, in conjunction with editorial, has the power to shape the team however he wants. And I don't have to necessarily enjoy that new team. I don't necessarily have to like how it gets done. But like that's absolutely the right of the comic book writer. I'm not I'm not going to quibble over that part. But one bit of information that came to our attention through a friend of the pod, Daryl Lawrence's host of the X Factor Files podcast, his book, True North, on Alpha Flight. For this particular issue, he pulled in some archival interview material, and you should pick up the book. Check it out. Absolutely. The one thing I want to note is that Mantlo describes Northstar's powers as being boring. And there's a tone to it. I mean, there's a lot of other things that are said there about Northstar's illness, what they were allowed to do, not allowed to do, who remembers what, all these things. But the idea that Northstar's powers are what's making him boring feels so deeply lazy to me. You have a superhero. Yes, he's fast and can fly and used to be able to generate a blinding light when he held hands with his sister. Okay. And yes, there are speedsters, but like it's always a question of how you use it. Super strength, invincibility, the phasing, all these things can be boring if you don't write the character properly. And in Northstar, you had a former French separatist militant who has a complete disdain for being a part of this superhero team and is only part of it for his sister. Powers are not what make characters interesting or what really keep us reading the characters. It's the characters. And so for him to kind of out of hand, discard and want to discard Northstar for that purpose, it's absurd to me. And honestly, Bill, Mannequin's powers make no sense and kind of suck. So if this is what you think is interesting, then we are really not talking about, we're just not in conversation with each other on this point.
I do want to read an excerpt from a quote that Mantlo gave The Advocate. The year is not immediately apparent to me, but it was, I believe, contemporaneous. Mantlo says, "It would also give me the opportunity to deal with a frightening, sad, controversial topic in a comic book, which I had always understood Marvel was all about. Readers responded very positively and wanted to see the subject handled sensitively. When the company found out what we were doing, I love that idea. When Jim actually read my fucking comic book, he stormed into my office and said..." An edict came down declaring that not only could Northstar not die of AIDS, but we couldn't even have a gay character because it was too controversial. They were afraid too many people in the Bible Belt would stop buying the book, and there would be all sorts of protests. I thought that was outrageous and antithetical to everything Marvel stood for. So I'm trying to give Bill some credit here. It seems like he was really wanting to do this, and they cut him off.
And I'm very glad you read that bit, because yes, that is also important. Mantlo was attempting to use comics for one of their great uses, right? Which is exploring stories, ideas, themes, and events in a way that is communicable, is digestible, and can have a real impact on folks. Absolutely. That's what storytelling should do. I guess I'm trying not to soften my previous statement, but to say that, yeah, I completely disagree with how Mantlo felt about Northstar, at least at this point. But the idea of trying to use his comics for greater social awareness, social good, 100% for, and clearly that's something that Bill Mantlo very much believed in. And honestly, from what we know of his biography and from what we went over, caused more than a bit of friction in his professional comics life.
Well, Wikipedia tells me that here in 1987, I don't know when in 1987, but Bill had begun working as a public defender in the Bronx in New York City. He had gotten his law degree, and instead of drawing silly comic books about the Incredible Hulk, he's now defending people on Murder One. No matter what, we'll both be famous, So maybe Bill is stringing along some of this story to get more time out of the story, to make things easier for him, because he's got, this big demanding job that is now sucking up a bunch of time. He can sort of say, oh yeah, I wanted to do this in 3 issues, but I can totally do this in 12 instead and keep getting paid. Because, as we all know, that is the basis of why comics are created.
But before we, move fully off of this topic, just to reiterate, definitely grab Daryl's book. We'll include a link in the show notes. If you're listening to this podcast, it is worth your while to have this as a resource. He did a lot of very good work pulling it together. So yeah, absolutely.
I have actually approached Daryl and been like, Daryl, I remember that this happened in 1 issue, but I can't remember which issue it was. and half an hour later, he comes back. He's like, oh yeah, that was issue 51. I'm like, yeah, thank you. I should have known that, but It's good to have friends who are experts, right, Tom?
You all have no idea how much it took. In college, there were so many things that Chris, like, when he finally asked me a question about a thing, he was so pissed that he had to ask the damn question. So I know that it killed him to have to ask anyone else about some Alpha Flight lore, but damn it, he needed that information.
One last point on Bill Mantlo in Wikipedia. Wikipedia also says, quote, other work by Mantlo includes runs as the regular writer on Iron Man and Alpha Flight. And that's it for Canada's premier superhero team on his page, while his run on the Hulk gets all the sloppy toppy, Tom.
What have I said about saying that?
All right, final point before moving on. Everybody knows that Northstar is sick. Everyone touches him and breathes the same air as him. Back at the pestilence in Death's Butt, or whatever that Burial Butte, when the whole village is dead of the plague and Doug is dying on the couch, and Heather just like runs up and is holding his hand and none of them are wearing masks. Why is there no concept of disease in this? Is it because of universal healthcare? Like, is that why they're so cavalier about getting sick about shit?
Did they do that when, what was the name of the virus that was killing all the mutants?
Legacy.
What did they start?
Yes, they did.
Interesting.
They had absolutely like lockdown, hermetically sealed everything because they were like, yeah, we don't know how this moves or anything. So we're just going to keep everything in there and we're going to stay out here and we're going to let this little blonde girl die.
Remind me the years for Legacy. Was that like 93?
Yeah,
93,
I think
94?
93-ish. I know that Uncanny X-Men number 303 is definitely when it has been happening. It was released at the end of Executioner's Song because it's called Stripes Legacy. It was what he gave Mr. Sinister instead of what he promised Mr. Sinister, and it was Sinister's lab tech who was like immediately sick with it and hinted that it was coming. Yeah, folks, none of this in the script. This is just a 90s ex-kid flipping it off the top.
The reason I was asking the exact time frame was I was wondering in terms of the various Ebola outbreak scares in the 90s and if that influenced some... I mean, we're talking about like, how pop culture influences things.
Yeah, 92, 93. Wait a minute. It says several things here. November 92 to early 93 is when Executioner's Song happened. So throughout 93, 94, 95 is really when that Legacy stuff was going on. And then Age of Apocalypse kind of wiped that off. They come back to it, but it never really, much like with Northstar here, it was built up by the writers to be a thing that was very clearly a thing. And then it fizzled out. And I don't know for sure whether there was editorial interference on the part of the X-writers or what, or if it was just the chaos of the 90s of the X-Men that it got lost. But it is clear here now twice that when the writers are trying to deal with something, the business people are stepping in and saying, hey, we need to be able to sell to the people who think that what you're saying is literally Satan's words printed on our paper. That's a whole other topic of conversation, I guess. That's a whole podcast worth of conversation, I think.
It is, and we can do that at some point. But I was mostly thinking in terms of the hot zone. It was originally an article in the New Yorker, and then it got turned to the book, and then got turned to a movie. But that really, I feel like, was when, at least in my consciousness, the idea of masking up heavily around like highly communicable diseases became like awareness. But that's also, I was 11. So why else would I think about it?
That New Yorker piece was published October 18, 1992. So yeah, like you might be absolutely right about the Legacy virus kind of coming from some of that zeitgeist around there.
Sure, and also the approaches to how you handle those situations versus, but having said all that, it's not like folks weren't masking up in disease situations in the 60s and 50s and whatnot. So I think the reason...
But they did in the 20s, Tom.
I think the reason that they don't in Alpha Flight is because it would have taken like panel time. That's it. That's it.
I think that they don't because Bill Mantlo hasn't spent much time in the medical world, as evidenced by the fact that he doesn't understand that Whitman Knapp, even being in the same room with a 13-year-old girl, is a bad idea.
That's fair. I also want to point out, though, that in the script you suggested or queried whether or not this contact with Northstar was intentional to help people not fear AIDS. And there's obviously the very famous image of Princess Diana shaking hands with an AIDS patient and what a huge deal that was. I think that's a really lovely thought, and it's certainly a possibility it would fit in with Mantlo's larger social consciousness.
That happened in 1987 as well. April of 1987. Yeah, I don't think it's a conscious thing.
Look, I have not loved Mantlo's run on this book by any stretch of the imagination. However, he seems like his heart was more often than not in the right place. And I think kind of summing up his attempt to bring awareness to AIDS through North Star and having this as sort of a side effect is a nice way of wrapping up that little bit of the conversation.
I wish this had ended differently, but I appreciate that Bill started it out with the best of intentions. So I think that wraps up what we have to say about Alpha Flight issue number 50. We're going to move on to a little bit of listener feedback. We have a note here from regular listener Richter Bloodmarch. Hey, Richter. Writes in to say, hey guys, I've been loving the podcast so far. Can't wait to keep listening. Hey, we can't wait to keep making it for you. Also, back to Richter's voice here. Also, I should preface that you will like Wanda a lot more than Walter.
Already do.
Trust. I also believe that Mantlo has beef with Puck, Shaman, Aurora, and Northstar. I will die on that hill.
Richter, we are, as is often the case, fully aligned on these points. We also have a piece of mail from listener Justin Brown on specifically the fact that we skipped over Alpha Flight number 47. Justin writes, thanks for the excellent pod in general and for your coverage of Mantlo Does Cronenberg in particular. I particularly love Scramble's evil Emo Philips voice, which now that you say it, I realize that's what I'm doing.
I love Emo Philips. Oh, thank you, Justin. I'm so glad somebody else appreciates the foundations of comedy.
Justin continues, please don't sleep on issue 47 for too long. In the larger scheme of what Bill Mantlo was doing, issue 47 was important to give Heather Hudson a win. In the final leg of the Mantlo era, Heather does some of the absolute worst team leadering ever committed to page, which is just that much worse, gestures with fingers, if you skip 47. Eagerly await the James Hudnall era, friend of the show, Justin Brown. Justin, we are going to get to 47 sooner than later. It just really did not fit in with the flow of what we were trying to do. Also, in planning out the episode order, our episode order, we thought it'd be nice to drop issue 50 on Canadian Thanksgiving. So,
yeah, that's what all the scheduling has been about, was trying to make sure that we had something really fun for
We've
Canadian
tried so many
Thanksgiving.
times to make things line up perfectly with certain holidays or certain events, and this one was like doable. So 47 just has to wait a little bit longer before we get back to it, but we will be getting back to it very soon.
I think we'll be doing it with the annual, and we're going to be doing it sooner rather than later, maybe even next. Who knows? Who knows? We'll see.
Because also this is as far out as we'd planned our episode order, so...
So, Justin, thank you for reminding me that there is more going on here than I initially caught from reading the book and reading your words. You're absolutely right that there is an uptick in Heather's confidence and leadership that does make more sense as we launch into the new era of Heather's murderous trio. Actually, over on Daryl's X Factor Investigations podcast, they refer to her as Murder Mommy Heather, which I think is great.
Wow.
Yeah, it's something.
That's something.
Why Not Read Alpha Flight is brought to you by listeners like you who subscribe to our Patreon, and by the Roxxon Energy Corporation, who wishes all our listeners a happy Canadian Thanksgiving. Was your turkey a time-intensive hassle? Between thawing, cooking, and basting, making a Thanksgiving turkey can take days. Well, a wise man once said that every frozen pizza in the grocery store is cooked to perfection at a certain distance from a nuclear blast, and Roxxon has taken this insight and applied it to turkeys. So if you've got a minimum of 5 acres and a nuclear regulatory agency license to handle plutonium, you can cook your next turkey in a literal flash with Roxxon's Turkey Nuker. You will need to have a minimum diameter of 10 acres of continuous land you both own and don't care about to use the Turkey Nuker. That was not my best delivery, but watching Tom roll his eyes through it was just delightful. Support for this podcast also comes from the Excelsior Embroidery Company, turning thread into thunder, creating original iron-on patches with a flair for punk, niche memes, and comic book chaos. Every piece is stitched with style, sarcasm, and just a dash of superhuman flair. From tea towels to tote bags, if it can hold a stitch, it can hold a story. You can see 100 designs at ExcelsierEmbroidery.etsy.com, where listeners of Why Not can use the coupon code WN503 to get 50% off when you order any 3 items from the Etsy store. When company's coming over, bring out the good towels. Excelsior.
Why Not Read Alpha Flight with Chris and Tom is recorded in Chicago, Illinois, and deep beneath stately Baker Manor in a fashionable neighborhood outside St. Louis. It is written by Chris Baker, edited by Tom Flynn, with additional voice work by my daughter, though not today, and cat noises courtesy of Teeny the Chunky Calico. Our theme song is O Canada by Five Iron Frenzy. New episodes are released every other Monday at www.thewhynotpod.com and wherever you get your podcasts, where ratings and reviews are always welcome as a way to help our community grow. And we love hearing from our community. You can reach us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and by email at whynotapod@gmail.com. That's whynotehpod@gmail.com.
Join us next time as we bid farewell to longtime Marvel editor-in-chief Jim Shooter, and some new kid on the block provides some pencils for us. What was his name again? Oh yeah, Jim Lee.
Mother of God. And Wolverine! It's the first story right after a huge status quo shift, so gotta bring in the old knucklehead to boost some sales.
We'll see you next time, folks. Thanks.
Seriously, Jim Lee. Wow.